everyone, today I'll be reviewing this brand new mystery thriller. The show dropped on Netflix called Omen of the Dead, and in this series you see this woman who is the funeral director. Like, she has her own funeral home where she, I guess she dress all the dead there, and she has a partner at her funeral home. But in the show we also see her husband, who is cop in the show. So in this show, we see when her husband gets murdered in front of her eyes, very brutally, just front of her house, front of her eyes. He just like that get murdered by this car. Like, he was going on a motorcycle and he get murdered by this car. After this brutal murder, she start wondering what happened, and she trying to move on with her life. But in this show we find, like, when she finds out, like, her husband isn't actually accidentally dead, someone killed him. When she finds this information, she goes around and start looking for information about who actually killed her husband. So she start discover a lot of stuff in this town she lives in, and this town is basically a ski town, and this show does have a lot of twist and turn. However, I really like this show. The pilot episode, it's really very good, especially the way it set up the story for this show. However, although I really like the pilot, the first episode is really very good and engaging. After that, this show did become very repetitive. Some of the stuff she goes through in the show, I found it a little bit unrealistic. Like, this woman, she just going to places and she getting punched by people, like, a lot in this show. When you watch it, you're like, ooh. I wish she backed up a little bit, but unfortunately in this show, she goes on and on about finding out the mystery behind who killed her husband. This show, it is very engaging, honestly, when you start watching it. As I was saying, the first episode does such a good job set up the story, especially the acting from the center actress. She's really good in this show. She's so good, and her character and her family, you really feel for them, especially after the tragedy happened to them. Although I feel like she did struggle a lot to keep everything together. Although once she found out that her husband wasn't accidentally killed, like, he was actually, somebody killed him, it was like, it was really like, I guess after that hard to move on, and behind all of this thing, like, who is behind all this, I found, okay, so mystery behind the character, maybe a little predictable, I would say, especially who's the main villain for this show. It's really predictable, honestly. The minute he showed up on the screen, I was like, I knew he was going to be behind all of this thing, and he was. So I would say the last episode, especially the mystery who is behind all that part, maybe it's not that interesting. However, watching this show was quite engaging, and it is intriguing for the audience. As the show, you find out all the twist and turn and who is all behind it, especially as she learned more about her husband's work, and as it goes on, it did become very interesting. And overall, the show, some part of the show, it is really a little bit unbelievable. But overall, this show, I found it really interesting. It came out of nowhere and I had a good time watching. However, the one thing I have with this show is that, first of all, dubbing for this show is not that good at all. On top of it, sometimes I felt like this show's editing was really poorly edited. Is it because they try to cut down the run time or something? Which is really worse for it, because it's really very quick. This show does move on very quickly, like, it isn't drag or slow burn or anything. That is why I think overall it is very satisfying watch that they wrapped up the story in 6 episodes. I could see season 2 coming back, although I don't know how much it costs. Depend on, recently Netflix, they canceled one of show from Germany at $18.99. After they canceled that, I don't know what will happen with this show. So I don't have high hope with this show. Then again, this show did end it on a, like, it didn't left with a huge cliffhanger that you must need season 2. But it does come back with season 2. I don't mind checking out, and that's my thought on this. I thought this show was really interesting. Acting is really good. Story itself is definitely interesting. However, the way ending and behind all this maybe it's a little predictable. Overall, it's really interesting watch, and that was my thought on this. Let me know in the comment what do you think about this show. If you enjoyed about this review, don't forget other reviews on other Germany show. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. Until I see you next time, please take care.